Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to share a story, a really chilling one, from the archives of true crime. It takes us into, well, the darkest corners of the American South, mainly between 1974 and 1983. We're talking about a time gripped by fear, dominated by a serial killer who claimed an astonishing 125 victims. Now, this individual, Ottis Toole, didn't just confess to this huge number of murders. He also apparently worked with a really disturbing partner in crime and claimed involvement with some pretty unsettling satanic cults. So the big question we're exploring is, was he truly this monstrous killer with that horrific tally? Or was he maybe at his core just a master deceiver?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because the whole narrative forces you to confront not just the horror of the crimes themselves, which are bad enough, but the very nature of truth. There's a dissection when you're dealing with individuals like this. So extreme. We'll be digging into his life, his mind, his alleged methods, based on the sources we've looked at.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. March 5, 1947, Jacksonville, Florida. Ottis Elwood Toole is born. Youngest of 5 kids, poor working-class family, and his own description of his childhood, a hell with no exit. I mean, from a very young age, Ottis went through things that are just, well, hard to fathom. His father, Bill Toole, was an alcoholic, beat him brutally, and Ottis recalled this one memory, absolutely horrific, from when he was just 5. His dad would bring friends home, take money from them, and then leave Ottis alone with these men. They sexually abused him. He basically became a commodity for his own father, sold again and again.
Right, and that raises such a fundamental question, doesn't it? What happens to a child when their earliest experiences are just marked by such extreme betrayal, commodification by the very people who are supposed to protect them?
That's right.
It warps everything. The psychological impact, of repeated sexual abuse, family, neighbors, add in the mother's chronic alcoholism and that really disturbing thing she did, dressing him as a girl, Susan, to shame him publicly.
Yeah.
It just created this incredibly twisted foundation for him.
And it wasn't just the parents. His siblings bullied him too. But despite all that, he somehow developed this deep, almost inexplicable attachment to his mother. And beyond the family trauma, there were health issues, significant ones. Frequent, long seizures look like epilepsy, dyslexia, ADHD too, and his IQ was measured at 75. So below average.
Yeah, if you put all that together, the severe trauma, the neglect, these developmental and neurological issues that probably weren't diagnosed or treated properly, it's often just a volatile mix, a real recipe for disaster, unfortunately. And in that whole dysfunctional mess, only one person seemed to show him any care, his grandmother. But well, her influence had its own dark side.
Right. She never abused him physically, but she was apparently a devout Satanist, and she introduced Ottis to her beliefs really young, taught him things like cutting himself, bleeding for Satan, even digging up graves for rituals, just incredibly grim stuff. Then, at age 10, Ottis tried to confide in his family about being gay. But instead of any kind of acceptance, he got ridicule, rejection, brutal rejection. And that spread quickly through the community. So this relentless torment, on top of everything else, it pushed him to run away from home for the first time.
That kind of rejection, that isolation, happening at such a vulnerable age, especially combined with all the earlier trauma, it likely just cemented this profound sense of being an outsider, utterly alienated, and probably twisted his view of human connection even further.
So he's wandering, living in abandoned places, and he develops this new, disturbing fascination. Arson. Setting fires gave him joy, he said. And later it became sexual arousal, pyromania. He survived by petty theft, which led to this cycle, juvenile detention, escape, detention, escape. By 14, he dropped out of school completely. He was involved in prostitution, sometimes dressing as a woman, and apparently obsessively watching adult films. And it was at that age, just 14, that Ottis said he committed his first murder. A client refused to pay him, then raped him. Afterwards, Ottis got in the man's car, ran him over, killed him instantly, and his feeling, not remorse, excitement, and this chilling desire to do it again. So fast forward, after various stints in prison for smaller crimes, something major happens. 1976, a soup shop. Ottis meets Henry Lee Lucas. Lucas was 40, just out of prison himself, and the connection between them was, well, immediate and chilling.
It's almost understandable in a twisted way. They both came from such similar backgrounds, so traumatic. Henry's father, an illicit moonshine maker, an abuser. His mother, a prostitute who'd make Henry watch her with clients. And she also dressed him in girls' clothes sometimes. So this shared history of, deep dysfunction, abuse, being treated like objects, it created this intense understanding between them. It quickly became a romantic relationship, but a deeply destructive one.
Ottis invited Henry to move in with him and his family. They even got jobs at the same paint factory, spent basically every hour together. But that bond, it just spiraled into something much, much darker. When they weren't working, their favorite activity was taking these road trips, Florida, nearby states. And the purpose was chillingly simple: find victims, to rob, rape, or murder. They often targeted vulnerable people, homeless, hitchhikers, but also store clerks who fought back. There was one incident, terrifying. During a robbery, a store clerk tried to cut her ropes. Henry just shot her dead. And what happened next is deeply disturbing. Ottis then sexually assaulted her corpse, necrophilia.
That specific act, it really shows the profound depths of their depravity, doesn't it? It goes way beyond just violence. It's like the victim's humanity is completely erased. They become nothing more than an object for these, well, incredibly twisted desires, a total break from any kind of empathy.
And another time they found a young couple whose car was out of gas. Ottis and Henry shot the man 9 times, killed him right there. Then they grabbed the woman. Ottis drove while Henry raped her repeatedly in the back seat. Then Ottis, apparently overcome with jealousy, stopped the car, dragged her out, shot her in the head, left her body by the road. Later, after they were caught, both of them confessed to killing over 100 people together. Ottis specifically claimed 125 victims, and their methods, varied and brutal: stabbings, shootings. They even made claims about grilling and eating human flesh, using bodies for satanic rituals, though how much of that is true, who knows. But despite this horrific bond they shared, Ottis apparently tried to maintain some kind of normal facade. He actually married a 25-year-old woman in 1977. Supposedly to hide his relationship with Henry. But she found out pretty quickly and divorced him. And then there's this other really disturbing element. During a time when Ottis was at work, Henry started a sexual relationship with Ottis's 9-year-old niece, Frida. She apparently thought it was love, tragically, and Ottis seems to have been completely unaware of this betrayal. Then, in 1981, something significant happened. Ottis's mother, Sarah, died. And for a while, Ottis actually stopped his criminal activities. He was consumed by grief. He'd visit her grave. He even claimed he dug it up and would lie with her body, saying he felt her move.
That act, while sounding maybe tender on the surface, is just so deeply disturbing. It really highlights the incredibly twisted and complex attachment he had to his mother, who was also abusive. It wasn't normal grief. It seems more like this desperate, completely distorted search for connection, maybe. A really warped way of coping with loss that just shows how broken his psyche was.
But it didn't last long. Soon after, Ottis and Henry were back at it. They even took Ottis's niece, Frida, and his nephew, Frank, on a road trip to California. And the kids were apparently complicit, helping with robberies. Their presence, ironically, probably helped deflect police suspicion, made them look like a family. During that trip, they broke into a house in Bonifay, Florida. 18-year-old Cheryl Lynn people came home unexpectedly. They murdered her. That trip got cut short because the children got sick. They had to go back to Florida. Later, another road trip, this time to Maryland. Henry abandoned Ottis again, who was sick, in a hospital in Delaware. He just fled with the children. Henry got arrested soon after, though, for stealing a car belonging to one of Ottis's relatives. So Ottis gets out of the hospital, feeling betrayed again by Henry. Really betrayed. He actually vowed to kill him this time. But then he heard Henry had been arrested, and his anger apparently turned to pity. And it was during this period, this complex time in 1981, that Ottis Toole committed maybe his most infamous crime, the one America remembers most. July 27, 1981, 6-year-old Adam Walsh. Abducted from a Sears store in Hollywood, Florida, Ottis lured him into his car, promising toys. When Adam started crying, Ottis just punched him unconscious. Brutal. He was driving, planning to dispose of the body, but Adam woke up. So Ottis used a seatbelt and strangled him to death. He later confessed to decapitating Adam's body, burning the torso, and throwing the head in a drainage canal near Vero Beach. Adam's head was found about a week later. It just devastated his parents and the whole country, really.
Well, absolutely. The Adam Walsh case had a massive impact on American society. Just transformative. His father, John Walsh, became this incredibly powerful advocate for missing children. Channeled that unimaginable grief into action. He founded the Adam Walsh Child Resource Center and, of course, launched America's Most Wanted. That show helped catch, over 1,200 criminals. It fundamentally changed how we deal with missing kids.
Yeah, a huge legacy. But back then, Ottis Toole wasn't immediately suspected in Adam's case. The police looked at others first, even, tragically, Adam's parents for a time. It shows the confusion back then. The full picture really started coming together later, after Henry Lee Lucas got out of prison again and briefly reunited with Ottis. But it didn't last. Henry was still obsessed with Frida, who was 13 by then. He took her and fled, abandoning Ottis yet again. Henry got arrested in Texas, though, unlicensed weapon, and then he became a suspect in 2 murders, including Frida's. And it seems like those murders murder charges just unlocked something in Henry. He started confessing to hundreds of murders, often naming Ottis as his partner. And he was pretty open about why. He admitted using confessions to get perks, things like free flights, hotel stays, special food. He preferred that to prison or being homeless. Eventually, he claimed over 3,000 crimes. Just an unbelievable number, though, most of it lacked any real evidence. Investigators called it confession tourism. So the police connect Henry with Ottis, who's in jail for arson by this point. Henry called Ottis, tells him to start confessing too. He says it'll be worth it, hinting at those perks. And Ottis does. He starts his own string of confessions, just opens the floodgates, admits to tons of crimes, including the arson he was jailed for, where he'd set fire to an elderly man's room, George Sunderberg, and got aroused watching him burn. Horrific. He also confessed to the 1974 Colorado Springs massage parlor murders, which was huge because an innocent man, Park Steep, had been wrongly convicted for that. And yeah, Ottis started getting the same perks Henry was enjoying.
And this really brings us to a critical point, doesn't it? The reliability of these confessions, especially from guys like Toole and Lucas. They both clearly showed patterns of confabulation, basically, making things up or misremembering details, either to fill gaps or just to get attention or gain something. Like with Adam Walsh, Ottis pointed police to a burial site, right? But the clothes they found, while similar in color, didn't definitively match Adam's. And crucially, DNA tech wasn't what it is now, back in '84. And later, key DNA evidence from the case vanished, mysteriously disappeared, which makes confirming anything almost impossible. It's just this tangled mess of potential truth and outright fabrication.
Ottis eventually confessed to 125 murders total, and he threw in these wild claims about being hired by a satanic cult, the Hand of Death. Said he sacrificed victims for them, sold bodies for snuff films, human trafficking, really elaborate stuff. But the police mostly dismissed all that. Saw it as more fabrication, fitting that pattern of wanting notoriety. There was just no evidence for it. But the most shocking confession was definitely October 21st, 1983, when he detailed killing Adam Walsh. He gave specifics, the knife, where the clothes were buried. Still, police were really skeptical, thought he might just be seeking attention, maybe repeating details he'd heard in the news. John Walsh, Adam's dad, he always believed Ottis did it, and he was very critical of the police investigation. In the end, Ottis was only formally convicted of 5 murders, including Jolene Body and Cheryl Lynn people. The confessions were just too unreliable for more. But years later, in 2008, authorities did publicly name Ottis Toole as Adam Walsh's killer, officially closed the case after all that time. So the story of Ottis Toole, whether he killed 5 or 125, whether the cult stuff was real or not, it leaves you with this just deeply disturbing picture, a complex, horrifying portrait of a killer.
Absolutely. In his case, like some others we've looked at, it really hammers home the impact of that early childhood trauma and societal neglect, too. The idea of a child being a blank canvas. Well, that canvas gets painted, sometimes irrevocably, by the environment, the care, or the terrible lack of it. Toole's path into crime reflects just this series of awful failures, family abuse, no acceptance, no real chance for education or help. And his case really highlights that challenge, too, of sorting truth from fiction when dealing with people who are so broken, so willing to confabulate for attention or gain.
So what does this mean for us listening to this? What do we take away? Well, it's a stark reminder, isn't it, of the long shadow cast by childhood trauma, the complexities of human evil. And it makes you think about these serial confabulators, how they can muddy the waters of justice and make finding closure so incredibly difficult. It really pushes you to ask, how much do our origins dictate where we end up? And how do we, as a society, try to stop these cycles of violence, prevent this from happening again? Thank you for joining us on this episode. Well, pretty unsettling deep dive into Ottis Toole's story. We hope exploring it has maybe given you some new perspectives on a case that still resonates today. If you found this discussion valuable, please consider helping us out. Like the video, share it with someone who might be interested, and please subscribe to The Deep Dive. We'll be back soon with another story. Take care.